From Software dropped a bombshell of nuclear proportions with the launch of Elden Ring, and already people are wondering what is up next for From Software. What's going to be their next major release? Well, it seems as though we're not going to have to wait all that long, and it may involve mechs. One of my favorite just things in any kind of medium. I'm already super excited about this. Before From Software really got big, they had this series called Armored Core that old school fans especially will be well aware of, and it seems as though they are planning to release a modern new entry based on the information we have and based on some leaks that we have seen in the past couple of months. All the way back in 2016, PC Games Zen released the following article, whose headline reads, "From Software have 3 games in development as of this year, one of which may be Armored Core," they speculated. When asked if the studio had abandoned Armored Core, given how long it had been since the last Armored Core entry from FromSoft, Miyazaki straight up told 4Gamers, whose interview was translated and transcribed by PC Games Zen, quote, "Of course not. Some time passed since Armored Core Verdict Day, and there was a difficult situation for Armored Core, but it is not going to end the series. One day, it'll come back," he said, and as of the publishing of this video, it may very well be in the near future, which I'll get to in a bit. The article continues, when asked what projects the team were working on, he replied, "Our future direction is I'll do 3 big projects. 1, an action RPG with dark fantasy intended to be represented by a different approach to Dark Souls. That's Elden Ring. The other one is a new game and a reboot, the title of which we have been working on the past. There's a clue. That is likely Armored Core, and this will become further evidence by recent leaks, which again I'll get to in a bit. And the last one is something different from our usual approach, perhaps something a little strange. This I'm very curious about, but not a whole lot of elaboration there. That brings us to earlier this year, January of 2022, when Reset Era user Red Licorice leaked a survey that he received that featured a description of this FromSoft game alongside screenshots and videos. This was all compiled by Reset Era user Angie, and going through Red Licorice's post will reveal what kind of game this will end up being. Here's what he posted on January 8th, 2022. "I've just finished doing a consumer survey about a new Armored Core game with description, screenshots, and 2 30-second-ish videos of gameplay. The first a boss fight, and the second more in-world gameplay, a snow area. These screenshots are unique ID watermarked, so probably not a good idea to post, but I did screenshot the text description. Here we have a screenshot of the synopsis of this alleged, still unconfirmed, but likely legit Armored Core entry. The synopsis reads as follows. Melange, an unknown substance that could dramatically advance human society. In the past, this substance caused a cosmic catastrophe on planet Bashtar that engulfed the surrounding star systems, and eventually its very existence was lost. Decades later, the melange reaction was confirmed again on planet Bashtar. In search of the unknown substance that should have been lost, various speculations begin to swirl. Various parties are getting involved: the government, corporations, cultists, and unknown mercenaries. The protagonist is one of them, so already we're getting a vague description of the various factions that could be featured in the game. The game is a third-person shooter mecha action title that lets you move around an overwhelmingly scaled map that represents a unique sci-fi world with dynamic mech action. You will face strong enemies and fierce battles, both long and short range, using guns and blades. Those who've played Armored Core will know that this is par for the course for this series' moment-to-moment gameplay. The synopsis also seems to confirm that Hidetaka Miyazaki, the main man behind, Dark Souls and Sekiro and Bloodborne and Elden Ring, it seems to confirm that he's directly involved with this project, as this is a sci-fi world created by Hidetaka Miyazaki, or the sci-fi world created by him. From Software's unique and deep sci-fi worldview and multi-layered story set on the planet Bashtar, a sci-fi world devastated by a planet-wide disaster with an overwhelming sense of scale that only mecha can provide. Modern FromSoft games do tend to take place in a more depressing setting, one that has been afflicted by a major calamity, and it seems as though this new Armored Core entry will be no different. We can likely expect that kind of oppressive vibe that FromSoft games tend to give off, and I'm excited to see how that melds with the mecha gameplay. The synopsis also briefly describes the game world as a vast field that represents a multi-layered world in a massive and three-dimensional map, and by three-dimensional they likely mean there's going to be a lot of verticality given the ability for Armored Core mechs to fly. You can feel the scale of the mecha universe. A wide variety of maps offer an array of challenging enemies and carefully crafted situations that are worth taking on again and again. Now I'm curious as to how this game will be structured. Is it going to be one massive world with interconnected areas a la Elden Ring, or if it's going to be smaller but still sizable sandbox areas that are separate from each other? Is that what they mean by a wide variety of maps? And they talk about how carefully crafted situations can be taken on over and over again and again. So does that mean they're replayable missions? Because that is how Armored Core tends to be structured. I've recently started playing Armored Core. I'm starting with 1 right now, and that's very much a select a mission, get dropped into this little sandbox, and then do the mission. It takes like a couple minutes tops. I'm assuming it's going to be on a much grander scale than, Armored Core 1, but I'm curious as to whether they're going to stick with that structure or if they're going to open things up a little bit more and make things a lot more seamless in terms of how you navigate the world and how you tackle one mission after another. Me personally, I get the sense that when they say a vast field and a massive and three-dimensional map, that seems to be referring to one giant world, and perhaps a variety of maps is, various different biomes and various sections, kind of like how Dark Souls is seamless, but kind of divided into different chunks. Since Dark Souls, FromSoft games have been seamless and interconnected, so I feel like that'll carry through in the new Armored Core game. But challenging enemies should come as no surprise. That has become FromSoft's trademark, and I'm curious to see the level of challenge we can expect from this title. And then scrolling further down, there is a mention of long and short-range battles. Feel the tension of that. This game offers not only long-range combat with guns, but also short-range combat elements such as blade and shield that add a sense of urgency to gameplay. Decide between offensive or defensive tactics during tense and challenging battles against powerful enemies. Armored Core is a series where you can really modularly customize your mech, and you can equip them with, guns and long-range armaments, or you can equip them with a blade and really get up close and personal. So it would seem as though that stuff's going to make a return, and that seems par for the course. And there's an emphasis on three-dimensional dynamic action. The game's dynamic three-dimensional movement is something no human can imitate. You can move freely around the vast map with the unique mobility of a mech, meaning that unlike something like Elden Ring where you're very much grounded and vertical traversal takes a lot of effort, in Armored Core, because of mech's capabilities and their ability to fly and hover in the air, the navigational aspects will likely be a lot more flexible there. And those who've played Armored Core will know that fast-paced aerial combat is a big part of Armored Core's identity. And then finally, a high degree of freedom in customization. Reconfigure body parts and weapons for your mechs in order to upgrade them. With a high level of customization, you can build a mech to suit your playstyle, from a build that focuses on close-range combat and mobility, or a build that emphasizes firepower to wipe out swarms of enemies at once. This right here is a staple of Armored Core: modular mech customization. Even playing through Armored Core 1 currently, there is a surprising amount of depth with the customization system for a PlayStation 1 game, and then future entries of Armored Core have only expanded upon that, and now with more modern technology, I'm very curious to see the level of mech customization we'll see in this game, and as a huge mech enthusiast, I'm very excited about that prospect. From there, Red Licorice decided to post a description of the 8 total screenshots that he received alongside the survey, but we don't have to rely on these descriptions, as he did eventually release the screenshots proper. These white streaks do obscure the screenshots a little bit, but they were put in there to hide the identifier watermarks so that this leaker wouldn't get into trouble. And this is a glimpse of the game's visuals, I suppose, though it's hard to say how old this build is and whether the visuals have improved dramatically since, but this still looks really cool, and we can get glimpses of the kind of scenarios that we'll find in this game, the kind of mech designs that will be featured, and the kinds of environments that we can expect to navigate. A pretty cool look at some of the art direction, especially, of this title. And I can't wait to see all of this in motion. That's where it really counts. As for the clips that he saw, apparently the videos were streaming and watermarked, so he couldn't save them even if he wanted to, so those we're not going to see. But the glimpses that we do have now, I'm already really compelled by, especially some of this really cool looking concept art that evokes that sense of dread that FromSoft tends to evoke, but in a sci-fi setting, and it's already giving off really, really interesting vibes that I'm looking forward to see fully realized. And if more recent reports are anything to go by, it would seem as though Armored Core 6, or whatever it ends up being called, isn't far away at all, as Miyazaki has said, according to this Video Games Chronicle article from June 24th, 2022, that FromSoft's next game, which is very likely looking to be Armored Core 6 or the next Armored Core entry, is in the final stages of development, and the Elden Ring director has suggested that this project has been in the works for 6 years. So they've definitely put a lot of work into this one. 6 years is how long it took to make Elden Ring, if I recall. This is information that Video Games Chronicle got from Japanese website 4Gamer, which interviewed Miyazaki, and he was asked about a previous comment he had made back in a 2018 interview, which is further detailed if we scroll down here. During that interview, he said that there are 3.5 lines that have been in the works since that time. By lines, I'm assuming he's referring to projects. That 0.5 is, I don't know how to pronounce this, Deracine, which is this PlayStation 4 VR game. And then from there, Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice encompass one of the 3 major projects. And then the remaining 2 were unannounced titles at the time. We now know that one of those is Elden Ring, and the second one of those is very likely the next Armored Core, which we'll likely see very soon. And then when asked to elaborate further, he said it's not the right time to talk about them in detail, but I think they're both games that are typical of us. It will take a little more time, but I think we'll be able to tell you about them one by one as they take shape. Now, the way he says that both of these games are typical of FromSoft could mean that Armored Core will lean a little more towards the Soulsborne identity. The older Armored Core games I wouldn't necessarily label Soulsborne. With this new game, I get the sense that they're gonna definitely implement a lot of aspects that make Armored Core, but also add that level of Soulsborne challenge and level design, maybe, that will pave the road to a much wider appeal for a series that's been more niche for FromSoft. Though he could also be saying that it's typical to us because we have made Armored Core games before, and this new entry is maybe going to stay more faithful to the Armored Core formula. I don't know, me personally, given the success that FromSoft has had with that Soulsborne genre, I get the sense that some of that is definitely going to seep into Armored Core. But anyway, scrolling back up the article, referencing this 4Gamer interview from 2018, Video Games Chronicle further elaborated by saying that one of those games was still on the way, Elden Ring's out, and now there's what we're assuming to be Armored Core, and Miyazaki confirmed that yes, it is on the way, and in fact, we're in the final stages of development for that yet unconfirmed and unannounced game. This is what Miyazaki told 4Gamer in a more recent interview. And in that interview, Video Games Chronicle also reports that Miyazaki talked about how FromSoft is working on multiple new projects from different directors. So there will be a number of projects following Elden Ring and Armored Core that won't be directed by Miyazaki. He's trying to put more trust into the now more experienced developers under his umbrella. In fact, lately, FromSoftware has been going on a recruitment streak, noting a wide range of occupations for multiple new projects being open for application. I'm once again curious about how much Miyazaki was involved in the development of this new Armored Core game, which seems to be coming soon after Elden Ring, and given how much of his attention was placed on Elden Ring, I've got to wonder whether he played more of a supervisor role with this new Armored Core game that's already in the final stages of development, or if he was kind of overseeing it in its entirety, if he was directing it alongside Elden Ring in parallel. That seems like a lot. On one hand, the synopsis does state that this is a sci-fi world created by Hidetaka Miyazaki. On the other hand, I remember when Dark Souls 2 and Bloodborne were being worked in parallel, and that's why Dark Souls 2 had a different director. And so I'm wondering if this is a similar type of scenario, or if Miyazaki found a way to juggle both Elden Ring and Armored Core. Now, the nail in the coffin that seems to confirm that FromSoft's next major game announcement, their near-term project that is already in its final stages of development, will end up being Armored Core, is the fact that according to this July 9th, 2022 report from PC Games N, Elden Ring dev's website is now Armored Core. Suspiciously, the FromSoft website has had an unintentional rebrand that may hint at the Elden Ring team's next game. This was spotted by Reddit user Macaulay Cullen, who posted this on Reddit. If you Google FromSoft, their website says Armored Core as the link title now, and he provided an image with proof of this. And checking out the image, you can see right here a search for From Software, and scrolling down, you'll find that their official website for some reason says Armored Core here. Now, FromSoft has since corrected that. If you search for FromSoft on Google now, you'll find that it says FromSoft Inc., not Armored Core. But if you go to their official website, you will see that featured on the front page are titles such as Sekiro, Elden Ring, Dark Souls, and Armored Core. I find it interesting that Armored Core is featured on the front page given how dormant this franchise has been. And I don't know how long Armored Core has been up here, but I don't know, I would expect something like Bloodborne here instead of Armored Core, given how much bigger and well-known and popular Bloodborne is compared to Armored Core, at least before the launch of whatever this new Armored Core game might be. So in recent months and weeks, there have definitely been signs that FromSoft is really starting to build up towards their big marketing push for what very well seems to be a new Armored Core game. I mean, that survey with the leaks of screenshots and even video, that might as well be as good as confirmation, but then you layer that on top of the official FromSoft website accidentally changing its name to Armored Core, and you've got a situation where I'm pretty confident, I'm like 99% sure in saying that FromSoft's next game will be Armored Core. It will be announced relatively soon in the not-so-distant future. This is an exciting time for Armored Core fans, and while I'm not a fan per se yet, because I've only just really gotten into Armored Core, I'm only just starting to play through them to build up towards the eventual announcement of the new game, so I have an idea for what the series is, so I can do coverage on it. It doesn't change the fact that I am a big mech enthusiast, and FromSoft, especially with their recent successful releases, helming a mech-centric game, and with everything described in the synopsis for this new Armored Core game being right up my alley, this is already one of my most anticipated games. Or at the very least, that's one man's take on everything we know about FromSoft's next game release following Elden Ring. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the prospect of FromSoft helming a new Armored Core, a mech-centric title. Share your thoughts below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.